Let me start out by stating where I stand on this topic. Gatekeeping has no place in the tabletop hobby or tabletop communities. I want to make that really clear from the start, so that if you feel at any point during this video that you disagree with what I'm saying, or you decide not to watch until the end, which of course I really hope that you do, you at least know my standpoint and you know my view and my opinion. I also feel that I should explain what I mean by gatekeeping. We're part of an ever-expanding community of gamers and hobbyists, and I shouldn't assume that everyone knows exactly what I'm referring to. Gatekeeping is the term used to describe the activity of controlling and usually limiting general access to something. Specifically in our hobby, it tends to mean actions of some people within the community who exclude others from it, for whatever reason that may be, more on that later, because they don't deem them worthy to be part of their hobby. Not the hobby, their hobby. Now there's two sides to this. If you're gaming at your home, you can invite and exclude whoever you want to. It's your game, it's your prerogative. I might not personally agree with your reasons for excluding those people, but that's not relevant, is it? It's your game, your rules. However, when those opinions spill over into social media, public gaming groups, gaming stores and conventions, for example, then it becomes gatekeeping. You are then excluding people from being part of a community because of something. So you might be asking what's rattled his cage and why is he ranting about gatekeeping? Well, as a white, middle-aged male, bald, beard, checked shirt, I tend not to be the victim of gatekeeping. I'm in that safe middle ground that's generally accepted to be target nerd. Because of this, some of what goes on with gatekeeping can go largely unnoticed by me. That doesn't mean, however, that it doesn't happen. Just because I don't believe I'm part of the problem doesn't mean I can't be part of the solution. So what triggered this video topic was something I saw on Twitter earlier this week. For those who don't use Twitter, certain hashtags will be trending day to day. This is when a certain topic becomes so talked about, it trends. The one that caught my eye this week was hashtag DnDselfie. Now, as someone who loves tabletop gaming and loves to keep on top of what's happening in the tabletop world, seeing this trending amongst all the other topics on Twitter was quite surprising. We're a small niche in the overall grand scheme of things, so anything tabletop related rarely makes the trends. I dug a little deeper into this and it seems that it was due to the popular US TV show Saturday Night Live, where they did a sketch about D&D which used some very stereotypical representations of 80s nerds. Socially awkward, thick-rimmed glasses, male, you get the picture. Well, the D&D community responded by taking to Twitter to show that things have greatly changed over the last 30 years or so. Twitter became alive with photos of all genders, all ages, all races, showing selfies in which some were their gaming groups, some were people on their own with their D&D collections in the background and hands full of dice, and others were just selfies showing how proud they were to be part of the D&D community. I thought this was pretty cool. Even though I may make these videos and share them with thousands of people online, I'm still pretty quiet about what I do with my hobby and my channel with sort of friends at work. It's quite random really, isn't it? It really did show how both our hobby and the folks in the community are growing and becoming ever more diverse. Of course, this is the internet, so it doesn't take long for someone to rage about something, and that's exactly what happened. There was a very small minority of posts who essentially said, "You're not true D&D players." They complained about how attractive some people were. They complained about the amount of females sharing selfies because D&D's cool now, and they had no place in their games of D&D. Now, people are entitled to opinions, I guess. What surprised me more was some of the reasoning behind those opinions. So one particular one that caught my eye said that these people in the photos were not the kids that were bullied at high school. They're not the kids that were forced out of social groups and pushed to find D&D because of exclusion. Somehow, because someone was more photogenic, they were not entitled to take part in this hobby. Now, it really struck me how someone felt that because they found D&D through being bullied, they had turned into the gatekeepers of D&D, and in some kind of retribution were saying, you didn't want it then, you can't have it now. Now, this was actually really quite surprising on a couple of levels. On the one hand, it was really sad that this person had been so affected by their early experiences that they'd become part of the problem and they failed to realise it. The other thing was their reasons for excluding certain people from the hobby. They were based upon very superficial things such as the colour of their hair, if they had a nose piercing, or whether they were deemed to be too attractive. It reminded me of other things I've heard about people saying things like, you're not a true board gamer if you only play light party games or Monopoly. You're not a true video gamer if you only play mobile games or Lego games. Or you're not a true miniature painter if you only dry brush and wash your minis. The more I thought about it, the more I realised that gatekeeping was all around me and I'd become complacent about it. Because it wasn't targeted at me personally, I became blind to it all. I'd hear the stories about women at conventions getting either physically or verbally abused, and because no one had ever really told me personally face to face about it, or because I'd never seen it happen myself, I absent-mindedly assumed it was a rare occurrence and that there was little I could personally do about it because I wasn't part of the problem. There was a chat in my Facebook group a little while ago now about a post on Vice which was about women in wargaming. Now, while the chat was very civil and actually in the main it was very constructive, one comment really stood out to me. I won't say who said it, but if that person ever watches this, they'll know it was them. The comment just said, just believe someone if they say it happened. Now personally, I can't say that I've really heard one of those stories or read about one online and thought, well, that's a complete lie, that didn't happen. However, I also can't say that I've ever really stopped to think about it either. Since then, I think I've noticed these things cropping up more and more, and they were always there, but I was just a bit blind to them. Now, you might not think that these issues are down to gatekeeping. However, if you take a step back and think about it for a second, gatekeeping is exactly the reason. The people who are being abusive to others are doing this to exclude them. They feel that they shouldn't be there. They feel that the people they're targeting shouldn't be part of their hobby. When people walk into a hobby store and they're made to feel kind of uncomfortable or unwelcome, that's because of gatekeeping. It's that look to say, why are you here? You're different. This is our group. You can't put that down to gamers being socially awkward. It's just not an excuse. It's the job of those store owners and group leaders to make people feel welcome. If they don't make them feel welcome, they're the problem, not the person walking into the store. If we want our hobby to expand and grow, we need to be welcoming to a new type of gamer. The type that hasn't played before, or maybe even the type that has never felt welcome before. One thing that often gets thrown up at this point is that we're changing the games to pander to others. But think about this for a second. Think about it if those games were your business. Would you adapt your product to appeal to a wider audience, to make more money and to grow? Or would you just say, the product is not for those people, screw them? If you were trying to sell your house, for example, and the walls were all covered in flaking paint and the garden was a bit of a mess, would you give it a lick of paint and cut the grass? Or would you just say, screw those people who don't like it, I'll find that one person who can see past all of this? The games aren't changing to annoy the current crowd, they're changing to grow and survive in an ever-changing world of gamers. You follow the eyes, and the more eyes you have on your product, the more money comes your way. What I'm getting at is gatekeeping breeds gatekeeping, and it's not just in our hobby. If you exclude someone from something, they can probably go on to then exclude others from it too. If we try to break down those gatekeeping barriers, we will over time be a more welcoming and a diverse community for it, and our games will grow and be even richer for it. Now, I'm not asking everyone to go off and be a white knight and fight the good fight. That's not what I'm doing here. I just want to raise the issue of gatekeeping to an audience, much like myself, who may well be totally blind to it. If one person watches this and thinks a little differently, or maybe addresses an issue that they may have ignored previously, then I've helped the problem and not just ignored it. I've publicly said that I've avoided subjects like this in the past because it can be a minefield. It's very difficult to get your point of view across in text form, be that Facebook or Twitter. Even in a one-sided video conversation like this, it's really hard to be fair exactly what I mean. And without being fully aware of all of the issues, I can end up offending somebody or one section of the community, whilst actually my intention is to try and support them. So these can be difficult subjects to cover. However, by not discussing them, by fearing that I'll say something wrong, I just keep adding to the problem by not mentioning it, by continuing to be ignorant of it and passive of it. Now, I'm sure there'll be lots of dislikes and I'm expecting some very interesting comments on this video, but you know what? That's a good thing. It means I sparked a thought, it's provoked someone enough to have an opinion on this, and I've no longer sat on the fence and ignored the issue. I will openly say now that there's not a single person I won't sit down to game with. Anyone is welcome to play at my table. How they act and how they behave may mean they're not welcome back a second time, but I won't exclude anyone for who they are, only for how they act.